Thank you, Mr. President. This is my no vote explanation for Senate Bill 285, and I ask my comments to be printed in the journal.
Without objection, so ordered.
This legislation continues a troubling pattern from the majority of this legislature. It's another policy change that is ineffective and focusing on the wrong things. While I fully agree that all kids should start their K-12 education in kindergarten, can anyone show any objective data revealing that they're currently not? This bill does nothing to address the real problems our kids are facing in our schools, and it continues to promote the false idea that the government knows more than parents when it comes to what's best for their children. As introduced, this bill would have absolutely mandated that any child who is 5 years old by September 1st of the relevant academic school year must enroll in kindergarten, either in public school, private school, or through homeschooling. This original language was highly problematic because, as many parents of kids with summer birthdays have experienced, including my wife and myself, some 5-year-olds are not ready for kindergarten. The amendments to this bill recognize this problem and provide an opt-out process. Parents that choose to delay enrolling their children in kindergarten for a year may do so, but only after they notify their local public school district of that decision in writing. I have 5 kids of my own. Some of them were ready for kindergarten at the age of 5, some of them were not, so we waited a year. The jury is still out on my 2-year-old twins with late June birthdays, but my wife and I will be the ones making that determination when the time comes, because we know what's best for our girls and we want what's best for them. This is not a decision that should be made by this legislature or by the state. This new opt-out process softens the original proposed mandate and improves the legislation in some ways, but the process itself raises potential concerns about unwarranted monitoring of a family's personal education decisions. Why collect information from families who are choosing to wait a year before enrolling their kids in kindergarten? What is the good that is going to be accomplished by making homeschooling and private school parents report to their local public schools for when their children are going to be starting kindergarten if they're going to do so at the age of 6? What are the districts supposed to do with this information? Is this a step toward the tracking of some families who might homeschool or send their kids to private school? That's none of the state's business. What's the problem we're trying to solve here? Every school district in Michigan already offers full-time kindergarten. They do this despite the fact that there's no kindergarten mandate. This policy was achieved roughly a decade ago when it was incentivized with dollars. Beginning in the 2012-13 school year, half-day kindergarten began funding only full-time kindergarten. Many parents also preferred full-time kindergarten, so it didn't take long for school districts to follow suit. Kids are going to kindergarten, and they're going there full-time right now. This bill is really a reaction to the sharp drop in kindergarten enrollment that we saw in the 2020-2021 school year, and the fact that kindergarten enrollment in Michigan public schools has not fully bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. Even this school year, we have 9,000 fewer public school kindergartners that we had in 2019. Why are there fewer kids in public school? Maybe they homeschool now, maybe they go to private school, or maybe their parents moved out of state. There's no way to tell for sure, but it does not appear to be that kids are skipping kindergarten altogether. There's no data or evidence to show that reasoning. I personally don't know of a single occurrence where a parent held their child from kindergarten and started them directly in first grade. The administrators I have spoken to could not recall a single time of it happening in their career. Does this happen at all? Let alone with enough frequency to demonstrate that there's a problem requiring new mandates? If you look at the statewide data, we routinely have more kindergartners than first graders. So this bill is not fixing a real problem. It's simply a feel-good talking point. We all agree that kids should have access and receive a kindergarten education. This is already being achieved without a state mandate. We are spending time and energy addressing a problem that does not exist. Since we do not have a problem of children skipping kindergarten in this state, then what's it all about? It seems that there has been a shift in how parents want to educate their kids. And this bill is an attempt to goad families to choose the state public option. Ironically, I think it's entirely likely that this bill is going to have the opposite effect of its intended goal. These mandates may very well lead to more people drifting away from the public school option. Mandates have consequences, and typically bad ones. In true progressive fashion, this bill, instead of recognizing and cooperating with human nature, attempts to subdue it. This usually backfires. People push back, and the mandates will have unintended and unforeseen repercussions. Tell people that they have to do one thing, and a significant number of people will say no and do the opposite. So what should we be doing instead? Well, the statistics make it clear. While we do have some declining enrollment, our attendance problem is far and away more pressing. Chronic absenteeism is likely the biggest contributing factor for our students' dwindling academic performance. These problems are quite different, and we should be focusing our energy where we can make a difference. Forcing someone to enroll in school does not mean they're going to actually show up and learn anything. Schools being shut down by the government for extended periods of time has changed behavior, and I do not believe the provisions of this bill are strong enough to change that. Before the pandemic, in the 2018-19 school year, the state reports that 19.7% of public school students were considered chronically absent. What are we seeing now? 30.8% of students are chronically absent for this past school year. That's well after the mandated shutdowns were over. Shutting down schools for so long sent a terrible lasting message, even if it was an unintended one, that the state just didn't think attending school was all that important. It's a mistake we're still paying for, and some of our kids might not recover from this. We need to refocus on recovering from lost learning. That's where we should be focusing our energy. Michigan's scores on educational assessment tests, which were not all that great before the pandemic, have by some measures gotten worse compared to the rest of the nation. We already have compulsory school attendance for our kids starting at age 6. And as the statistics that are out there demonstrate, that doesn't mean that they're going to show up and learn. The new mandate before us isn't going to help in that regard. We need to be focusing on issues that make a difference, like addressing chronic absenteeism, restoring accountability measures that the legislature has gutted. We took a big step backward in terms of actually helping kids learn. We did that when we did things like repealing the third grade reading law and weakened evaluation standards. We should be focusing on retaining teachers and filling vacancies and supporting our teachers with the resources they need and the standards in place to help our kids learn. Look, I agree with the premise that kids are better off starting school in kindergarten, and that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing any kids skipping kindergarten and going straight into first grade. But at best, this bill places a new mandate on Michigan families, and it's not going to move the needle on improving student performance. And at worst, this bill is an attempt to interfere with a parent's choice on when their child should start school and where they should attend. I would like to think all of us in this chamber want policy changes that will improve the most pressing problems in our schools, and that will lead to an improvement for our children's outcomes. But this bill is not the solution we need. Thank you, and I urge a no vote.